Hi, I'm Soleil Dakota, and this is Musical Medicine. Welcome back for part 2 of our interview with elephant activist Marty Perlmutter. Marty is back from New York, where he took part in the first international march for the elephants. We'll come back with a full bio for our guest, Marty Perlmutter, and hear the latest news about the growing global social campaign to save the elephant from extinction. First, I'm going to share some footage from Africa interwoven with the performance of a song I wrote for our magnificent endangered wild elephants. I wrote this song after hearing an inspiring talk that Marty gave here at Marin TV a few months ago. This song is called An Elephant in My Heart.
In my heart, I hear the elephant crying out, stop the killing, no more killing. I don't need no ivory in my home, long live the elephant, long may she roam. Can you hear the elephant crying out? Stop the killing, no more killing. I don't need no ivory in my home, long live the elephant, long may she roam. In my heart, I hear the elephant crying out, stop the killing, no more killing. I don't need no ivory in my home, long live the elephant, long may she roam. Can you hear the elephant crying out? Stop the killing, no more killing. I don't need no ivory in my home, long live the elephant, long may she roam.
So Marty, I was really excited to play this song for you. I hope you liked it.
I adored it. I adored it.
I wanted to write just a few lines that people could hold on to, make a statement. And I have an elephant in my heart, and stop the killing, no more killing. I don't need no ivory in my home. So people could just hold on to a few lines and feel that in their hearts.
I was seeing it as an ad, as it were, as a communication to audiences in the West as well as in Asia. As I listened, I couldn't help myself. So, but just to take one of those stanzas, those quatrains, and just illustrate it, and it's very, very powerful, as you know.
Thank you, Marty.
And I love the image of in our little human heart.
Yes.
To put, we've talked last time about the pool of cares that everybody has, and we want to plunk an elephant into their little puddle of concerns.
That's right.
And the next step is to put an elephant in their heart.
Marty, I want to reintroduce you to our viewers. Marty Perlmutter has worked in interactive video since 1970. He did pioneering work in video art, portable video, and virtual reality technologies, and has built major museum video exhibits. After producing the award-winning first ever interactive movie game, he produced interactive products for IBM, AT&T, and the Metropolitan Museum of Art. He wrote a book on interactive video production and was co-founder of the San Francisco Multimedia Development Group. Currently, he runs a nonprofit dedicated to creating new ways to learn math and is producing a mobile math game. For the past year, he has been working in partnership with the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, creating informative ads intended to raise the awareness of Chinese ivory consumers and convince them that killing elephants for bling is a bad idea. Welcome, Marty.
Good to be back.
Yeah.
And great to be with you.
Tell me about the march. What was your personal experience? Marty just got back from the International March for
in New York.
Elephants in New York City.
So I'm sorry I missed the San Francisco March. I heard wonderful things about it and saw some very inspiring video. In New York, where I grew up, I had a number of unique experiences, but I must say the vibes of the march were the sweetest, most innocent, and most inspiring you could possibly imagine. You couldn't conjure a gentler assemblage. It was great. Really great. We walked from the Hudson River all the way across Manhattan to basically the shadow of the United Nations building, Dag Hammarskjöld Plaza, and there were speakers, and they were incredible speakers. And it was marvelous. The vibes were great. The cops were great. And I brought my little pocket trumpet and played the sound of an elephant trumpeting at all the intersections.
Telling me that.
So yeah, I played Broadway and at 11th Avenue and 5th Avenue and all the way.
Oh, that's amazing. Right?
The speeches were arranged from Ian Douglas Hamilton of Save the Elephants, who is so eloquent and wonderful. Brian Christie from the guy who wrote Blood Ivory last October. Incredible piece in National Geographic, and he was eloquent and inspiring as well. And there was a speaker from the Kenyan Wildlife Service, and a woman who's a leading conservation person in Kenya as well, and Kristen Davies from Sex and the City, who is completely and totally smitten by elephants because she was at the Sheldrick Trust and they happened to find a baby while she was there, and that's it. Nobody can escape that vortex, and she's been an advocate for elephant conservation since. So great stuff. It was really good vibes, good material, and people left really energized and feeling good.
It's fabulous. What has happened
as a
since
consequence?
the march? Yeah.
This is something that people who have political experience, organizing experience, will resonate to. There's this kind of the theorists of revolution talk about the thermidor, which is when you put the tobacco in this little container and close the lid and just let it cook for a while. There was some immediate sense of resonance because there were all kinds of Facebook and other postings of these marches from 40 cities had marches, 15 official march sites on 5 continents, and then 25 supporting marches in various places. And then it got quiet. So we're in the quiet time now. the thermidor phase, the cooking phase. The stew is cooking, but there's a lot happening. There's a lot happening, and I think it was successful as an awareness raising mechanism, and that was what it was intended to do. But a march, a demonstration, even a demonstration that spans 5 continents, doesn't change the facts on the ground.
Right.
You know, what needs to be dealt with, which is the crisis in Africa of killing, which seems not to have abated because the demand is still there. The suppliers are not facing, you know, in most cases, mortal danger in killing the elephants and in poaching the ivory. There are still places in Africa where you can kill an elephant and get a $300 fine if you're caught. There was a cache of almost $100 million worth of ivory, representing at least 1,800 dead elephants, just confiscated in Hong Kong. And one kingpin guy named Chen and 2 other people were picked up. And the Chinese are actually beginning to make the kinds of moves you'd want to see, but it's a bit late in the game when you're dealing with, 3,600 tusks. The killing has already occurred. The damage has already happened. We need to put a higher price, both in Africa and at the receiving end, on participating in this.
Well, I read that Kenya had outlawed hunting back in 1973 when the elephant population was alarmingly decreased.
Yeah.
And that Kenyans believe that elephants deserve to live.
Yeah.
What are the governments doing now to stop
Kenya,
the...
of all the nations, is really acting rightly. They've increased the penalties, to something really substantial, like 15 years in jail. And they just killed a poacher a couple of days ago. Game wardens in Samburu, I think, or maybe it was Savo, came upon 5 men. They shot at the wardens. In fact, they wounded one of the wardens quite seriously. And the wardens returned fire and killed one of them and injured another, and they captured the remaining dudes. And the Kenyans are taking it seriously, And the British, the Minister for the Environment just was in Kenya, and the British are sending 24 paratroopers to help train the game wardens of the Kenyan Wildlife Service because they're now dealing not with, a couple of villagers who are angry because their turnips got raided. They're now dealing with guys with AK-47, so they need military training, essentially, and support. And the Brits, bless them, are helping out. This is their former colony, and there are moral and other reasons to support their efforts. So the Kenyans are doing good. I wish I could say the same for the Tanzanians, but I can't.
Well, China is by far the #1 consumerism for ivory.
Yes.
And what steps are they taking to
Well, the Chinese are enforcing the law, but somewhat, I wouldn't say selectively, I just would say without the level of seriousness that we know China is capable of. This is not a high priority thing yet to the Chinese. I would say that part of our job, what we're doing today and what concerned citizens want to have happen, is to prioritize this in the Chinese mind, popularly as well as governmentally.
Right.
China, of all nations in the world, could close down their illegal ivory markets, online and offline. They could stop the smuggling. They could interdict the rings, the criminal rings that are involved, and they could really cut themselves off. They're trying to support activities basically in law enforcement in Africa, and I appreciate that. But in a way, because demand is such an important part of this, that's like exporting the solution. The solution is a little closer to Beijing than Mombasa. China's activities should focus more on law enforcement in China. They have great laws. They just have to enforce them. And I think they will. As this gets prioritized and as their awareness arises, we don't have time to waste, but I think it will occur.
How can the message get to China and the deeply held beliefs of, you said that people believe that tusks are just naturally fall to the ground.
Mistaken belief on the part of, they say the majority of Chinese citizens think that the elephants shed their tusks like deer drop their antlers, or like baby teeth are. They don't realize that it's a mortal, transaction. You have to kill the elephant to get the tusks. So educate them to that.
Yeah.
and educate them to the extent of the emergency, the fact that the elephants will be extinct if we don't solve this in the next decade or so, and that we have very little time to waste. So get rid of the disinformation, the misinformation.
Right.
Convince them that this is an emergent problem, that this has to be dealt with swiftly. And then I think appeal to them, not using shame, but or superstition. I've heard various proposals about doing that kind of stuff. I don't. That negativity doesn't call to me, but rather just make it not cool. You know, grandpa or daddy or mommy may now have some serious money for the first time in anybody's life in the family, in the century or more, and want to show it off. And it's an ancient, honorable thing in China to have a lovely ivory statue. If the college-age kid can convince dad that he would be embarrassed if his friend came into the house and saw that, that in time may have an attitudinal shift impact.
Yeah, right. A new generation.
Yes. And my goal is to speak to those kids, those college kids, those literate middle-class kids who are more globalized and potentially a great deal hipper than the older generation, and say, not this.
Right. So advertising campaigns, you
Yeah.
use them to change attitudes
Yeah.
and policies.
Yeah. Using, there are several different places where we could take action. In the demand reduction area, convincing people not to want it. If nobody wanted cocaine, who cares what they do in Colombia? They'd have to drop it out of helicopters for any of us to imbibe it. If we can convince the Chinese, and I must say, if we could convince the Americans, because they're a piece of the global market as well, not to want ivory, it's game over.
So I've read that really what's needed is a global ban. Well, like you say, the demand, if people want it.
Yeah.
Even the ban won't stop people.
Well, there's a ban on rhino horn as well, and rhino horn is priced, it's more valuable than gold right at the moment, and it will extinguish the rhinoceri. Just a week ago, they declared the western black rhinoceros extinct. We don't have very much time at all to deal with this. There are a few thousand rhino left, and 850 of them have been killed in South Africa this year. It's this craziness, and it's because of demand. And why? In that case, that's because of superstitious beliefs that rhino horn ground up will fill in the blank, cure cancer, do what Viagra could never do. It's nonsense, but people believe it. We need to convince them otherwise.
What is the U.S. government doing to protect endangered wildlife and the elephants?
The U.S. has some pretty good laws and pretty good commitment on the part of the Interior Department to enforce them. It's the Fish and Wildlife Service of the Interior Department that enforces the CITES Treaty, which handles all endangered wildlife. And they have grant programs, they have public education programs, they have interdiction programs, they have all kinds of stuff that is more than on paper. They're getting into the business of enforcing those rules and beginning to work more closely with the Department of Justice.
Glad to hear that.
You want to have the DOJ. You want to have justice in this because you want to have convictions. You want to send people to jail for violating this stuff. And I'd like to see that across the planet. I'd like to see the Chinese sending people to jail for long periods of time. I'd like to see the Africans doing it, and I'd like to see the U.S. government doing it. And interdict not just the smuggling, but the criminal rings, because we know these are big international criminal syndicates that are now doing the major movement of those 3,600 tusks. That was not done by amateurs.
My goodness.
Just think about the scale of what was required to physically transport that stuff to Hong Kong.
It really saddens me to hear these
Yeah,
things.
because it's not just the 3,600 tusks, that 1,800 elephants. There were another, let's say, 300 who were shot, who died out of range, and all of their babies are dead. So let's figure that's at least 3,000 elephants gone.
What can concerned citizens do to help stop this global trafficking of wildlife and contribute to saving the elephants? What can we do?
In any way support the commerce in these materials. So, speak to your friends and tell them that you wouldn't do this and that they shouldn't do this. don't in any way increase the status or prestige of these things. Don't compliment your friend's beautiful ivory bracelet.
Right.
Get this stuff out of circulation. Get it gone. And support whatever efforts you hear about that are, aiming to do that, to cease the commerce in ivory, to convince the Japanese as well as Americans, that this is an evil and destructive thing. And not just ecologically, but politically and in terms of international security. It has lots and lots of negative implications. It's bad for the world in every way.
Yeah.
As well as being bad for the elephants and other animals who are endangered. This is doable. The trick here, the challenge right now is we know we have a heart.
That's right.
But there's a spectrum of empathy in people. Some people have less than others, and some people don't have an elephant in their heart, nor could they accommodate one. In fact, they might have trouble putting a mouse in their heart. We have to enlarge people's understanding of what the stakes are and help them to feel this earth and their role in healing it and caring for it. This idea has been around for a long time. We've had Earth Day since 1970, but it's time that we all turned on to that.
That's really beautiful, Marty. Thank you for that. I know you've told me about how the elephants are really an important part of our ecosystem globally. Can you tell us about that?
Sure. Take the African forest elephant. There are 3 subspecies of elephants on the planet. There's the Indian elephant, and then there's the Loxodonta africanus, the big savanna elephant we all think of, and then there's a 3rd subspecies, which is the forest elephant of Central Africa. The 36 most common trees of equatorial Africa have their seeds spread in elephant dung. If you get rid of the elephants, you get rid of the dung. You get rid of the dung, you get rid of the seeds. You get rid of the seeds, you get rid of the trees. And lurking right above equatorial Africa is this little thing called the Sahara that's trying to move south. You get rid of the trees, and you get a desert. So they call the elephants the gardeners of the forests. They create paths that the other animals need. They clear out underbrush that smaller animals need space to find food and to forage and to live. And they spread the seeds of the plants and the trees. So that's the northern, African elephant, the equatorial elephant. In the savanna, they do the same. In the savanna, they garden, they organize. What we think of when we think of, Central African, Southern African savanna with the occasional trees and the open space and grassland, that's the work of millions of elephants for millions of years.
Yeah, that's so beautiful.
They're also, they're just part of the web of life. People say, I've heard Brian Christie and others, Nick Nichols, the fabulous photographer for National Geographic, has said, a world without elephants is unthinkable. The terrible thing, of course, is that it is thinkable because we're facing the possibility now. But a world without the largest, most charismatic land mammal is a world diminished. And not only will it have ecological consequences, it is a spiritual and a moral crime for a simple reason. We've begun to do research using PET scanners, brain scanners, on dogs, specially trained dogs, because we can't knock them out with anesthetics. We have to train them to be calm, so they sit inside the brain scan device, awake. And what we've noticed is that the exact same part of their brain as our brain that registers pleasure lights up when we show them a picture of their owner or a bowl of food. In other words, their brains respond exactly as ours do to pleasure. We can see that now. It's not a theory. And so this notion about, the pathetic fallacy, they call it. The pathetic fallacy, what a hideous choice of words, about imputing to animals that they have human-like characteristics as if we're so different.
Right.
The ratio of brain to body mass in the elephant is exactly the same as in a human.
My goodness, Marty. We're almost out of time, and there's a couple questions I just want to ask you. If there's enough time and enough love in the world to save the elephants, and also I'd like you just to tell our viewers what's the most important thing that you'd like people to know about the elephants and the elephant crisis.
Do we have the chance to fix it? I believe we do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have any leisure, which is why I'm working on it
Right.
now. I think we need to treat it like the emergency it is, and tune into it, and ask our governments to collaborate with us and change and enforce the laws so that ivory commerce ceases in the United States, in China, and internationally. What people can do is, they can write to government officials, both American and African. A letter writing campaign to the Tanzanian government is very much in order, saying, hey, please, could you protect the elephants in the Serengeti, please? Because we hear there are 80 a day being killed there, and I'd like to visit while they're still around.
Yes.
And as far as the Chinese go, let's not get heavy with the Chinese yet. I believe the Chinese are going to come around. Let's clean our house.
Let's clean our house.
And then let's turn to the Chinese and say, hey, show us how to do it even better.
Marty, I want to thank you. You brought me into this movement, and I'm just so touched to be a part of it and to hear you talk about the elephants and just the spiritual quality of the earth and the connectedness of life.
You have an elephant in your heart.
Yes, that's right. I have an elephant in my heart.
And the room to accommodate it.
That's right. That's right. And
Bless
I love
you.
you, Marty.
Bless you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Thanks so much. Do you have an elephant in your heart? Would you like to help the elephants and protect other wildlife? Here are some ways for you to do that. Spread the word. Boycott ivory. Volunteer. Adopt a wild animal. Donate to wildlife organizations.